They have this quarter, meaning past quarter, third quarter of 22 growing. Then they have the fourth quarter, the first quarter, the second quarter, and the third quarter, all in negative territories, around 0.5%, 1 to 1.5%. So a slight shallow downward trend, and then growing at the end of next year. They have pushed that projection for recession out a little bit into 23, but their core belief it's a mild recession.
That was Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan speaking with our very own Brian Scheid this morning. The investment bank beat the results, or beat the street, I should say, with results on Monday, benefiting in part from higher rates. Well, policy tightening has been the story of 2022, along with sky-high inflation. Both of these factors, a lethal combination for stocks, and therefore not exactly fertile ground for IPOs either. Fewer companies are looking to navigate a listing in this environment because of the high volatility and low investor appetite, in part to poor returns from last year's new issues. Here to break it all down, to see how this is all playing out in the IPO slowdown, we've got S&P Global's senior writer, Brian Scheid. Good to talk to you today. I guess the question here is, are we starting to see a turn? Because we have seen the big dip in activity. We're now in October. Are things starting to look up?
So thanks for having me on, Akiko. I really appreciate it. But if we're looking at 2022 compared to 2021, 2021 was really this record-setting breakout year for IPOs. According to S&P Global Market Intelligence data, there were more than 3,250 IPOs in 2021. In 2022, we're on track for about half that. And that's thinking that things are going to sort of keep at the same pace, which I think most people are thinking there's going to be an additional downturn. So in the U.S., we're on track to have about 1/6 as many IPOs in 2022. And it's safe to say, really, that all momentum from that breakout year has been lost. Just a little more perspective on this, for the first 3 quarters of this year, the IPOs worldwide raised about $144 billion. Now, that's $68 billion less than what was raised in the first quarter of 2021 alone. IPO activity really has slowed down to a crawl in 2022, and I'm not sure that it gets much better from here.
We have heard over and over, especially with some of these highly valued tech startups, that the comps are tough when trying to come to market. They have slashed valuations. Yesterday, we saw Intel looking at a lower valuation for their IPO for Mobileye. I mean, how many companies do you think are willing to come to market in this environment, even with a lower valuation?
So obviously, each company is very different. But you look at sort of the overwhelming factor that companies, they just don't think that they can raise that much cash right now through an IPO in 2022. Whether or not they can take that lower valuation, I think, is anyone's guess. I think right now they'll probably wait it out a little bit longer. If you look at the biggest U.S. IPOs of 2022, we were looking at, Corebridge Financial, that retirement and insurance company. They raised nearly $1.7 billion last month. TPG, an asset management company, raised about $1.1 billion back in January. Those were really the only billion-dollar U.S. IPOs. That's it. So you compare that to last year. You had Rivian, the electric vehicle maker. They raised, $11.9 billion, almost $12 billion. Lucid Motors, another EV company, raising $4.6 billion. We're just not seeing anything on that scale in 2022. And with all of the different factors at play right now, Fed rate hikes, volatility, recession fears, like it was discussed, I just don't see that number jumping that much in the fourth quarter. And we're going to have, this severe downturn we're seeing in 2022 when compared to last year. That's most likely just going to continue.
So what do you think is the catalyst that could turn things around? I've heard you say over and over that you don't think things are going to turn, at least in the short to medium term. What are you going to be looking for that says that maybe companies are ready to come to market again? Is it about the Fed policy, sort of seeing the tightening cycle, wrapping up? Or, what exactly is it that companies are going to be looking for?
There's all these different factors, right? You have, like I said, heightened volatility, the war in Ukraine, inflation hitting levels we haven't seen since the early 1980s. But you did mention this. The one big thing, Fed rate hikes. That's boosted borrowing costs sort of across the board for these companies. The Fed has boosted its benchmark rate by 300 basis points since March after having this, ultra low, near zero, rate policy for since the beginning of the pandemic, and that really fueled that IPO growth, that record-breaking growth in IPOs we saw in 2021. Now, the futures market expecting another 75 basis point hike at their meeting in November. The Fed could hike, I think the expectation is almost to 5%. So that ramp up from 0 to 5%, by early 2023. I think, at that point, you need to see some sort of Fed pivot.
Yeah.
And I think most people, the market, you see these jump starts going on in the stock market right now. And that's, sort of this hope that becomes false hope that the Fed is pivoting. And until you see a very clear sign that Fed pivot is happening, I don't think that you're going to have much of a turnaround in this IPO environment.
Okay. Expect a little more quiet to come here. S&P Global senior writer
Absolutely.
Brian Scheid, good to have you on today.